I remember the day Sango was sent away from Oyo. It was the day the kingdom lost its brightest flame, and for many of us, it felt like the sun had set at midday. Sango's father, Oranyan, dies, leaving the throne to his elder brother. Sango is sent to live in exile, where he learns from great warriors and sorcerers, gaining more skills and knowledge. He befriends key allies, including his loyal warrior, Bonka. Sango begins to develop his signature powers, showing early signs of his connection to thunder and fire. The trouble started not long after Sango returned from exile. His elder brother, Dada, who had been ruling in their father's place, was nervous. Everyone could see it. Sango was different now, stronger, smarter, and somehow, more. The people loved him, and that made Dada uneasy. One afternoon, a messenger arrived at the palace. He brought news of a neighboring kingdom's attack on one of our border towns. The council gathered, and I was there, standing by the door, carrying messages back and forth. I saw how Dada hesitated, unsure of what to do. Sango, on the other hand, didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. We must act swiftly. If we wait, more of our people will suffer. Dada frowned, clearly irritated. You speak as if you are king, he snapped. Sango met his gaze, his expression calm but firm. I speak as someone who cares for our people. The room went silent, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air. Dada, feeling threatened, ordered Sango to lead the army to the border, hoping to remove him from the palace and perhaps, out of fear, hoping he wouldn't return. The next morning, Sango prepared to leave. His mother, Torosi, was there, holding his hands, her eyes filled with worry. I saw them from a distance, but I could hear her soft words. Be careful, my son. You have a great destiny, but the path is dangerous. Sango nodded, his face serious. I will return, mother. Stronger. I watched as he mounted his horse, a group of warriors behind him. As they rode away, a part of me wished I could go with him, to see what lay beyond the borders of our kingdom. But I stayed, watching until they disappeared from view. The weeks that followed were tense. Dada ruled with an iron fist, making decisions that many found harsh. The people missed Sango's presence, his sense of justice, and his strength. Rumors began to spread. Some said Sango wouldn't return, others whispered that he would come back to take the throne by force. And then, one evening, just as the sun was setting, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. It was Sango, but he was not alone. Behind him, a group of warriors followed, their faces tired but victorious. They had driven the enemy back, securing the border. I ran to the gates, along with many others, to greet them. Sango dismounted, his eyes scanning the crowd. He smiled, but there was a weariness in his expression. The people cheered, welcoming their hero home. But Dada was not pleased. I saw him standing at the palace entrance, his face dark with jealousy and fear. He knew that Sango's return would only strengthen the people's love for him. That night, there was a council meeting. Dada summoned everyone, including Sango. I wasn't allowed inside, but I lingered near the doors, straining to hear what was being said. You disobeyed my orders, Dada's voice was sharp. I told you to wait for further instruction. I did what was necessary to protect our people, Sango replied calmly. And we succeeded. You think you can do better than me? Dada's voice was rising, filled with anger. There was a pause, then Sango's voice, quieter but firm. I think the people need a leader who will act when action is needed. I held my breath. It was clear that Sango was no longer just a prince, he was a leader, a warrior, someone who could challenge Dada's rule. The next morning, whispers of rebellion filled the air. Some wanted Sango to take the throne, believing he was the rightful ruler. Others were loyal to Dada, fearing the change Sango's rule might bring. Sango, however, did not speak of rebellion. Instead, he trained with his warriors, preparing for whatever might come. He knew that power was not something to be taken lightly, and he wanted to be ready, no matter what. One evening, as I watched him from afar, he called me over. I was nervous, but I went, curious about what he might say. "Do you believe in destiny?" he asked, his eyes thoughtful. I nodded slowly. "I think we all have a path, but sometimes it's hard to see." Sango smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "My path has always been clear. I was meant to protect this kingdom. But sometimes, the hardest part is knowing how." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunset. And in that moment, I saw not just a prince, but a man who carried the weight of the future on his shoulders. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the palace grew. Dada became more paranoid, isolating himself and making rash decisions. Sango, on the other hand, continued to earn the respect and loyalty of the people. Then, one fateful night, everything changed. The palace was awoken by the sound of shouting. I rushed to the courtyard, my heart pounding. Sango stood there, surrounded by his warriors. Dada was on the balcony, looking down at him, his face twisted with rage. "This is treason," Dada shouted. "No," Sango replied, his voice steady. "This is justice." And with those words, the battle for the throne of Oyo began. That night was a blur of chaos and noise. I tried to stay out of the way, but I couldn't help watching. Sango fought with a power that seemed almost otherworldly. His movements were swift, his strikes precise. The palace trembled with each clash of swords. When the dust finally settled, Dada was defeated. Sango stood victorious, but there was no joy on his face. He looked around, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. The people gathered, waiting in silence. Sango raised his hand, and the crowd fell still. "I did not want this," he said, his voice echoing through the courtyard. "But I will do what is necessary to protect our kingdom." And with those words, Sango became the Elephant of Oyo.